Old Kids Book Fest is a literary celebration that brings a diverse range of books and creators from marginalized and underrepresented communities directly to your classroom. Designed with students and educators in mind, our virtual festival events feature dynamic presentations and interactive activities presented by authors from across Canada who reflect a wide range of styles, genres, and experiences. One virtual festival pass connects you and your students to a world of imagination, learning, and literary fun for primary, junior, intermediate, and high school students. The festival's curriculum connected programming includes storytime events, writing workshops, and author interviews that spark imagination, and educator workshops that deepen understanding on important and relevant topics. Fold Kids Book Fest is presented on a secure and innovative virtual platform packed with fun activities and resources, including an educator guide that provides pre and post event classroom activities to support your festival experience. Whether you're watching live or on demand, Fold Kids Book Fest is the perfect way to celebrate literacy and spark creativity. Get your class ready to read, write, draw, and dream at this year's Fold Kids Book Fest. For more information, visit thefoldcanada.org/kids.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today at this event. My name is Jael Richardson. I am the founder and executive director of Fold. And we're really excited to present this conversation about building inclusive classrooms with diverse books. We are going to spend about an hour walking through some really cool and innovative ways to create more inclusive spaces in your schools, especially using the resources and the information we provide at Fold Kids Book Fest. Before we get into it, we're going to open up the chat. And if you could just introduce yourself, say who you are, where you're from, that would be really great. I'm also going to try something. Oh, I don't know, which is I'm going to put a poll up here to see how many of you have been a part of Fold Kids Book Fest before. If you've attended with your classes before or you've never attended, we'd love to just get a sense of who's here and how familiar you are. As I mentioned, my name's Jael. I'm the founder and executive director. I'm also an author, Gutter Child. Today I Am is my middle grade book. And then I have picture books as well, The Stone Thrower, Because You Are, and The Hockey Jersey. So I come at this as a writer. I come at this as someone who grew up in the Peel District School Board, graduated in the Peel District School Board, and really have just had such a joy starting this festival and building this program and initiative with a phenomenal team that you'll meet in a little bit. So I'm going to share a little bit about what a literary festival is. We're going to talk about Fold and what we do and why that mission matters to building inclusive classrooms. We're going to talk about specifically how what we have and do supports teachers and educators. And then we're going to have a bit of a conversation with an educator within the Peel District School Board who's worked with us for a few years, talking about her experience and some of the ways in which she's used Fold and the ways that she helps us going forward. And then we're going to take, I'm very excited, a sneak peek, the very first peek at Fold Kids Book Fest 2025, the look for this year, the illustrator who's behind it, a few sessions, and just a little bit of a teaser, and then a little bit about how you can get books. And we're going to then open it up for questions at the end. This session will also be recorded and will be available afterwards if you have to dip out at some moments or you miss something. And so just information about that. If at the Q&A point you have to go and you want to come back and check out the Q&A, that's always encouraged. That Q&A box is here now though. So feel free at any point during the event to put your questions, things that you either want to ask myself, our educator who's here today, Ardo, who's our curator. You can put those in the Q&A box, that little question mark, and we'll answer those questions at that time. Okay. I think we've got most of you have responded to the poll, and I'm so excited that most of you have never been to Fold Kids Book Fest before. Both excited and like, where have you been all our lives? So let's get into a little bit about what Fold is, because I guarantee part of the reason is you're at least curious about what that is that you haven't seen before. And for those of you who have been before, a little bit of information about who we are and how it works. So to start off, one of the things that's really important as a framing is to understand what a literary festival is and what Fold Kids Book Fest is. I'll start by saying I started Fold, the Festival of Literary Diversity, as a way of bringing together Canadian authors from underrepresented communities to an event. Initially, it was just in Brampton and it was just in person. And now we've sort of evolved to do a whole bunch of other things, including Fold Kids Book Fest, which is offered in a virtual and in person format. I'm really passionate about the virtual format, which of course evolved through the pandemic, because it's a space where every school across Canada can take part in our events. They can meet our authors. You can bring your classes. You can bring yourself. You can learn from them no matter where you are. And that's a really, really important part of our larger strategy of accessibility and bringing awareness to Canadian authors and children's authors, in particular in Canada, have a really hard time getting exposure, being found by educators, and vice versa. I know a lot of educators express concern about finding stories. And so we wanted to create the channel, the vehicle for you to be able to find authors and authors to be able to find you. And virtual is just such a special way that we can all kind of meet together in this space. And we're going to show you how that space is unique. Another thing that makes us unique is a lot of people are quite familiar or perhaps have had a lot of experience with Forest of Reading. And we love our friends at Forest of Reading. Love them, love them, love them. But we found that sometimes people were confused about the difference between the two and sort of understand literary festivals from that kind of experience. And some things that are really important differences between Fold Kids Book Fest and Forest of Reading are that our events are much more like, I want to describe it like a conference or like a film festival. You're meant to come and attend and experience with no prior knowledge, no prior research, no prior purchases. So you don't have to buy all the books. We're going to show you our book list. We're going to show you how to find titles by Canadian authors from marginalized communities, but that is not a mandatory part of experiencing the festival. You're really encouraged to just show up and watch a workshop on illustration, listen to a story time with an activity, listen to a conversation between an author about how they came up with the idea for their book. We have an amazing series called The Writer's Life that Ardo curates, where authors who have different types of jobs come forward and say, this is what I do for like my full-time job. I'm a lawyer, or, I'm a filmmaker, and this is how I wrote my most recent book. And such a great way for young people who are searching for careers and thinking about the future to find some of those answers from somebody really unique. And so that's one of the ways that our festival is different from Forest of Reading, and one of the ways that the Literary Festival is really just designed to be a space that you can drop into like a virtual field trip, and meet these authors and take part in these events. And so we'll give you a little bit of teaser of some of those events in a moment, but I just wanted to clarify that. We have over 20 events, and over like 20 different virtual events that cover all age categories from 4 to 18. And so I'm going to introduce Ardo in a moment, who will explain a little bit more. But before I do that, I want to introduce you to the whole Fold team, because at various points over your time, you might come into contact with us. My name is Jael. I mentioned that. I'm the executive director. The picture you see behind you is a picture of downtown Brampton and the Rose Theatre, where we hold a lot of our what we call Big Fold events. We do another festival in May that includes teens, and that's sort of a cool way to show off a space we're really proud of. On the bottom right corner, you'll see Sneha. She's our newest staff member, and she's a person that many of you will actually be in contact with over the next few months if you choose to. She handles all of our partnerships and our school board relationships. And so she's often a person that's either sharing information with your school board or with you directly. And she's our outreach and communications coordinator. Welcome to the team, Sneha. Lynn, who's listed there, isn't with us today. She deals with adult titles and adult programming. So more likely to come into contact with Lynn, either if you're watching the podcast, or if you are dealing with adult titles or coming to Fold as an attendee, where you can also get some really useful resources as an educator. The last person I'm going to introduce, I'm also going to brag a little bit, and she doesn't know it, but maybe she should have expected it. Ardo Omer is our kids program coordinator. And Ardo, to me, is one of the most knowledgeable people about Canadian children's literature and comes at it from such a thoughtful, mindful lens. She curates everything related to Fold Kids. So all the titles, all the book lists, all the programming you see is really gathered and executed by her. I get the joy of helping her in some ways, but a lot of this is led by her, and just such a wise view, wise lens on inclusive literature in Canada and finding incredible authors who are underrepresented in more ways than one, and just a really special part of our team, especially when it comes to Fold Kids Book Fest. She's been with us basically from the beginning. And so I'm going to pass it over to her to talk more specifically about kind of why we're here and what we're doing, which is how can Fold support school libraries and librarians and educators as well. And so take it away, Ardo.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the kind words, Jael. Unexpected, but should have known. But thank you so much for joining us for this educator event. Like Jael said, we're going to look at how Folds can support school libraries, librarians, educators, anyone who is purchasing titles or including titles in their classrooms. We talked about this entire event is around diversifying your bookshelves, right? Or being more inclusive with the books that you feature in your classroom or teach in your classrooms. And what's really cool about Fold Kids, even Fold Kids Book Fest, is that our very mission is all about being in line with culturally responsive pedagogy. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to actually share the virtual platform. So the best way for us to help you build your bookshelf is through initiatives or festivals like Fold Kids Book Fest. And the virtual platform, as Jael explained, is like the best way to do that. So there's so many cool things on there, but we're going to pick and choose what we get to show you that's specifically relevant to educators. We're going to start in our auditorium because first and foremost, we are a literary festival. And here you can click through to go to our schedule. Right now, our site is under construction, so you'll be seeing a lot of the 2024 festival events. But this is where during the live festival dates, November 4th to the 6th, you'll get to watch our fantastic virtual events. And the platform will actually be open a few days earlier on October 30th. So you can investigate, see how everything works, test things out. And we'll also have bonus events available on the October 30th for you to play around with and be comfortable in time for our live virtual events. We have resources that we cannot have a festival, specifically a platform dedicated to educators without having resources that you can tap into. So we have our library where you have author videos where some of our authors talk about how you can teach their books in the classroom. We have other resources like the festival program and educator guide. And then we have additional content where, hey, maybe there's a book that has an educator guide that's very specific to it. Maybe the author is someone who's an illustrator and they have a ton of YouTube videos where you can see how you can draw the character in question. And so this is what this space is designed for. And then in terms of resources, the exhibitor hall is an important space to visit, where we have folks like ourselves with our materials, but also like publishers, Tinlits, the bookseller, Another Story, who's our in-person bookseller, but different organizations that are relevant to educators. And so you can visit their booths, check out their titles, things like that. And in fact, what I'll do is, this is our lovely, this is amazing, the way the virtual event looks. It's, oh, every time I'm so excited to see this exhibitor hall. But the thing I want to focus on specifically a little bit more in depth is the educator guide. So the educator guide is a document that we work very hard on putting together. We work with Tony Duvall, who will be showing up in a few minutes to talk about the process of creating it. But our educator guide is a document that's usually available by registration or a bit after that. And where basically you get to have, it's a space where we've created pre-event activities and post-event activities. We have curriculum connections as well, just general curriculum collections that you can then, that is hyperlinked, and you can see how that is connected to the festival in question. And then we have individual events. As an example, we had the Pet Rock Project from last year. So some events will have discussion questions, and some will have activities attached to it as well that you can work on with your students. And then lastly, we have our author profiles. These author profiles are to get to know the author more, but also as a resource to be like, hey, it's nice to know that this author is located in Nunavut, and I'm a teacher in Nunavut, so I can maybe reach out to the author and see if they'd be interested in a classroom visit, and things like that. So the Educator Guide is our pride and joy, and we hope that it really helps elevate your experience with the festival. And then, of course, I'm going to shout out some year-round resources, because we never stop offering resources for our educators, for our parents, for our guardians. And so we have Fold Kids Book of the Month, we have our year-round reading challenge, and this past June, we released our 2025 summer reading list. So we have seasonal lists, including the winter reading list that's coming up. And then lastly, Canadian Publishers List that I wanted to flag, because I know a lot of educators want to know what are the Canadian authors that are out there. And this is a helpful page that you can access to find the folks publishing those authors. So all of this can be found at thefoldcanada.org/kids. And so we are now moving on to the panel conversation.
Yay. So I'm really excited to introduce our friend, friend of the Fold, personal friend now, who I met through Fold, and just a really incredible part of our team for a long time. I don't even know how many years at this point, Tony. But I thought, Tony, maybe you could start by just sharing a little bit about, what your role is, like where you work, what you do, and how you came into the Fold, as we say.
Okay, thanks, JL and Ardo. Great job. I'm so excited. Like, it's not November. You mean it's starting tomorrow? Like, anyway. So my name is Tony Duval. I am a Peel District School Board educator. I work in Brampton. I live in Brampton. I work at Beatty Fleming Senior Public School. We're a grade 6 to 8 school. And I have 2 roles in my school. I'm a half-time librarian, and I work in a special program in the afternoon. It's called Hub 8. We're getting to learn what our program is, really just serving students with exceptionalities and making sure they have everything they need for their learning. I came to Fold as a participant. A teacher librarian that I knew said, "Oh, you live in Brampton. There's this, have you heard of this literary festival?" And I had not.
Thank you to whoever that was. Thank you.
Yeah, that was Laura Zanin. I worked at Thorndale Public School, and she saw a poster in the community. And she said, you live, like, she didn't live as close as I did to the Rose. So yeah, I just went, and I was like, what is happening? What's going on? I also heard JL speak at OLA Super Conference. And I think I was like so nervous, but also so, I don't know, brash to be like, what are you doing? What is this? I don't understand. Can I go to it? She's like, yes, it's a literary festival. What is wrong with you? No, she was very gracious. So I went, I was like, this is awesome. And so I just thought, this is great work in the community. And I just signed up to be a volunteer, went and helped out. That was amazing. So now I am the volunteer coordinator for Fold. Such a passion of mine to just help out, be a support. And then because I'm an educator, I've also been supporting with the Educator Guide. Yeah, it feels like such a small, little side hustle, but just to make sure everybody kind of has what they need, right? To kind of help and do what you need to do. So yeah, so great to be here and be talking to everybody. And so many people outside of Peel, like I'm in my own little Peel bubble, Brampton, Mississauga, Caledon, and we always say it, the world is so big, but it's so small, because you kind of see people everywhere. But I just see all these school boards coming up. I'm like, wow, we're talking to everybody, not just Ontario, Canada. So I'm so glad so many people have joined us and are interested, because I feel like you'll get hooked. You do the festival once and you'll just want to do it every year.
My dream is that one day OLA Super Conference and Reading for the Love of It, like it's just full of people wearing Fold gear and being like, I love Fold. And so, but before we get to that, to the stage of our lives, I wanted to ask you, Tony, you put together the educator guide. You're an educator yourself. How do you come about the content that you're working on? Ardo is our expert curator. She comes up with these lists. What are you looking for and what are you trying to build when you're developing that educator guide each year?
So yeah, first I get a fabulous list. I usually am so lucky to, I get the preview of all the books. So I'm trying to read as furiously as I can. And I think it was just last year that I started to say, I think, I'm reading these books, and as an educator, you read a book and you're like, well, how can this fit in my program? Yes, I'm teaching reading. Yes, I'm teaching writing, but how else? I'm always cross curricular. So I read a book, I think, oh, this is perfect for my grade twos. I came from primary, and I think this is great for my grade two, science unit or social studies. So I said to her, I think we need to start linking this more deeply to the curriculum, because we don't want, I don't think that Fold is an add-on in any way. It's only supporting the program that you've already built, and that you want to bring in the most current, the most recent resources that you can. I know as a teacher, you're always like, I've done this, I've done that. What else is new and fresh I can try with a program that I'm familiar with? Or maybe you're teaching a new grade and you're thinking, oh, I don't know, like I'm looking at this middle school curriculum. What else can I add to it to make it really exciting? So we've tried to, as much as possible, and I'm always looking for educators, help me out if you use it in another way that hasn't been, explained in the educator guide. Put something on social media, email us, because I'm always looking for ways to make it as useful as possible. So yeah, first I kind of did that, and then I'm looking at, I know Ardo said you don't have, and Jael has said both, you don't have to buy the books before you do it. So I'm always thinking, like, what can you do before, during, after? A lot of the sessions, if it's a picture book, we're going to read the book. And so when your students are watching, they're hearing that story. You might be hearing it for the first time. If you watch it in like a recorded version, you're hearing the story maybe before the students. So then you're thinking, okay, now I'm going to, use it on this day with this topic. But always trying to make it as easy as possible for educators to just embed all of these stories into their program.
Mhm. I love that. I think one of the things too that I love is when you have the year-round access, it allows you, if you have a very young group at the beginning and they're like only available for story times, you can actually revisit some of the programming that's, if you're primary and there's junior content, you might by the end of the year be able to show different content than you would at the beginning of the year. And I find that guide really helpful in providing some direction about that. Ardo, I want to ask you, how do you find these titles? Like how do you get this together? Because one of the things we knew, I'm going to tell a brief story. One of the things we know is that some of these weren't titles that were being published when we first started doing Fold. Some of these, like I remember when we first started our first Fold Kids Book Fest, we were looking for a book by a Canadian author who was disabled, talking about disability, maybe directly, maybe indirectly, maybe nonfiction, maybe fiction. It was just anything, and we could not find a single title. And we kept digging and we thought, oh my gosh, this is such a major problem that we have kids growing up through the education system never having encountered a Canadian author from the disability community telling happy stories, good stories about what it means and what it looks like to live with disability. And since then, we've had Scooter Twins by Dorothy Allen Palmer and other authors who've come out with these incredible stories. So, Ardo, how do you find them? Now that we're seeing them published more often, I know teachers are always like, I don't know how to find this stuff. How do you do the magic?
I do the magic by, and I think teachers can relate to this, is having an impressive Excel document. So I would say 80% of how I find titles is through publishers. And that's a combination of like, oh, coming into this job, I had worked at another festival, so I knew about the publishers that existed and added them to my list. And then over the years, I would have that list grow in terms of the publishers, and essentially, in some cases, reach out to them. Sometimes they reach out to me and have these pitch meetings in June, where or end of May, where they'll tell me all the titles per our specification, where it's like, we want to, everyone's welcome, but we want to prioritize marginalized identities. And so they'll let me know all these authors. And for the Kids Festival in particular, we like to like try our best to just focus on as much as possible on Canadian authors, especially. And so they would, you know, tell me all of their authors. And it's a year-round process as well, because of the other programs that we have. And then the other 20% is like through personal research, CBC books, through going to other festivals, like telling tales and such, or like having someone literally say, "Oh, did you read this like new middle grade?" I'm like, "No, no one's pitched me this. Why not?" And so that's how it goes about. And then the curation process actually is partly, it's in conversation with folks like Tony, who's part of our Fold Kids Advisory Committee of educators. And so, you know, before the festival planning gets started, I email them and go, teachers, what are your students like? What are you noticing in your classrooms? What do you want? Tell me. And so, as a sneak peek, I found out about a grade 8 curriculum of NGOs that I didn't know existed. And that's, you know, students are interested in things like activism. So it's a combination of all of that, and seeing also in the news as well, like what are kids experiencing and all of that. Every year the curation is different because we're trying to meet the needs of that moment. So the festival is it's all about like what's happening, like what's being published, what's happening in the world, and then seeing what we can contribute as a space.
We're going to open it up for questions in a little bit later, but just a reminder to put your questions in the question and answer box. I have the privilege of asking a question I've wanted to ask for a really long time of Tony, because nobody can stop me. Tony, you recently did what I describe, and I'm not sure if you describe it this way, as sort of an audit of your library and an audit of the books in your library. And I wonder if you could talk about that, about how working at Fold maybe impacted that decision or helped you make decisions about titles. Can you talk a little bit about that process you went through?
Yep, that was when I came to my middle school. I was taking my librarianship part 3, I believe. For people doing AQs, you know the lingo. And I think it was like actually during the pandemic, I had a big list of all the books in my library. And as the project for my course, I decided to look at only my fiction section. You know, teacher librarians, how big your collections can be. I had to make it manageable because I was basically categorizing every book based on the author, the nationality of the author, if I could find that, their gender. I had a whole bunch of criteria just to see who was on the shelves. Also, the publication year, was the book Canadian, all that type of thing. And I did it. I kind of knew what I was going to find. It's almost like, you know, you dig in your closet and you're like, I think this is in here. I think I know what's going to be behind this old shelf, but I don't have it in black and white. I don't have it like as a data set. And again, librarians, right, we do a lot of data collection, and a lot of our book buying will even be based on the data that we have collected in the past. So I was trying to be data driven. And, you know, kind of what I expected to happen happened. You know, I didn't have a very diverse collection. And I thought, well, you know, the teacher librarians who have come before me are, you know, really great educators. Like, why is this happening? And then I started to look at, you know, public libraries. I would kind of go and look at their books. And then you look at the bookstore, like, oh my goodness, go to a big bookstore and you're looking at the shelves going, okay, who's being sold, who's making money. And this was a conversation we were having at Fold. It was all at the same time. We were having these conversations at OLA Super Conference, right? Who are we reading? Forest of Reading, who's on the list, all that type of thing. And so it started to make me ask questions. Who am I buying? Who is getting the money from? And I'm just one little middle school in downtown Brampton, but I have a budget and that goes to someone. So I started to be really, I don't know, specific, really picky, like every book, like why am I buying every book? And I'm not saying I don't buy Diary of a Wimpy Kid, right? Like I buy what moves, I buy what's popular, but also I buy what kids don't even know. How do you even know you can read, a certain author unless it's on the shelf, unless it's advertised, unless it's forward facing? So I was asking a lot of questions of just like, where is the money going? And then, like Jael said, we're questioning publishers. Do you have what are the books that you have available to us? And I think if you're coming to Fold for the first time and you're a book buyer and you're the person who's purchasing, go back to your book vendors, go back to your publishers and ask them. If you don't see what you want, start questioning, because that, I think, is what's driving the change. It's that conversation of, this is what I want for my library. And I'm not an author. Somebody said to me, like, you should just write a book. I'm like, write a book? That's way too hard. I'm like, I'm just going to bug other people, because there's a lot of voices out there, but are they getting published? Right? What are the publishers? Who are they deciding to actually publish? Because they have an array that they can choose from. People are pitching. If you're an author, you can pitch to Fold.
Amazing.
So yeah, it was kind of a small project, but it's completely changed the lens through which I buy every book that goes on my shelf now. It becomes your philosophy, really.
It's so we have our main philosophy at Fold, like if you were to sum it into 2 words, is literally who's missing. And that's been the launching idea from starting Fold, when it was just me and my pal Amanda. And then also when Ardo came on board for kids content, and expanding the team since then. It's who's missing on your shelves, who's missing in your own reading, who's missing in your curriculum content, and really trying to help fill the gap. Because I think a lot of people said who's missing and they're like, but I don't know, is it even out there? I don't even know how to find it. And I will say my first children's book, Stone Thrower, was because a teacher librarian said, the memoir that you wrote, I would really like to teach that in my grade 1 class. And so my first children's book, the only reason I write children's books now, because that was the start, is because a teacher librarian said, we're missing stuff like this. And so as we progress, we start to see even more, I don't want to say shortcomings, we see more opportunities. For initially it was just like, we want to see more marginalized authors. And then it was like, oh, most of the marginalized texts are nonfiction. Can we see some fun stuff, some like not so historical stuff? And we're really trying to push publishers and encourage publishers to think more expansively about who's missing and how they can approach that question. And so I appreciate you mentioning that.
Sorry to cut you off there, but and how are people represented? Right? Like, yes, I want to buy a book. I want the students in my school to see themselves in stories, but not only in stories of trauma. Right? We know, like, I can call it if you want me to, but like, there's some communities, it's a lot of trauma. That's how people are represented. It's like, where's the joy? Where's the fun? Where's the humor? Where's the magic? Where's the mystery? Like, and so those are the stories I'm looking for also. I'm not saying we should never address that, of course, but I want a range of the human experience, right? I want all of those stories. And I feel like what we did actually 2 years ago now was a big weed. If I don't think a lot of people from Peel are here. I feel like Peel knows a lot about the field. But if you don't know a lot about Peel, we did a huge weed. It was probably in the news and anything. But we were weeding, and it made a huge difference. Like, what is on the shelves and what do I have room for, right? I want my collection to be more current, and I want to be relevant to my students. And I'm not saying a book from 2000 may not be relevant. It might be. I can maybe make a case for that book, but I got to think about that, right? I can't just keep it on the shelf because I bought it, so it has to stay there forever, right? And so I think we changed our philosophy even of looking at resources as a consumable. Like, that's harsh to say. I was talking to my sister-in-law this weekend about it. I said, books are kind of like pencils. Like, maybe you don't go through it that quickly, but it does have a life. And sometimes, its life is over and it doesn't, and especially if it's harmful, right? If we're looking for really being sensitive to our communities, we're looking for anything that causes harm, that should already have been removed. That's already, things that are on our minds. So it's really big. Like if you are in education right now, you already know you have a big job. I don't think that Fold is putting more on you. I think Fold is supporting you in the hugeness that our job is and bringing things to you to say, here's a resource that may, it may be great for your community. It may not. You got to make that decision. But well, every book that Ardo gives me is a good book. So, but I only have one Ardo. So like,
I will
We
say,
always say
just
all
to,
hits, no misses
oh, thank you.
when it comes to Ardo.
I will say that I just want to make it so clear, like schools are so important to the economy of books. Like your voices matter in terms of, whoever you're talking to, your vendor. I don't know who has direct line to publishers. If you do, amazing. But the ecosystem of the education system in terms of purchasing books, in terms of teaching books, in terms of marketing books, because there are books being published, right? Maybe there's certain communities that we're not seeing enough of, but they are being published. Voices are being published, but the biggest hurdle is we don't know about them. And to have a book circulating in schools is massive. And the fact that as educators, you have the power to, and know that you have the power to be like, I want to be able to teach about this X community or X topic. And I know that these days, it's also a place where it's like threats of like challenges and book bans. It's the first site. Public libraries and schools are like the first place. And I just I want educators to know Fold has your back and to remind you through Fold on your own, you do have the power to be inclusive, to help raise a generation of leaders. The idea of like cultural pedagogy, like responsive pedagogy, did not exist when I was like a school kid in TDSB Toronto. So in this job, I felt like a lot of healing has happened as a former student, and so I just wanted to take this opportunity to say that.
Well, I'm going to add Ardo too, as a librarian, I see like the whole school. So yeah, I could put books on shelves, but also interpersonally with the educators I work with, right? People will come ask for a recommendation. What do I recommend? So if you are at a higher level where you see the whole school, you have that extra, superpower to even put more things into more hands. And then, the teachers then bring that to their students. So, and if you're administrator, right, there could be administrators on here, watching, it's like you have an even bigger reach, right? Who are you bringing in as guest speakers to your schools? What parent nights are you running, and family nights, and who's welcome in your building, all that type of thing. Like we have so much power. We have a lot of responsibility. And sometimes it feels crushing. But I feel like Fold is a place of joy where it's like, I'm not on my own doing this work, right? There's other people having this conversation. When you find this community, you go, oh yeah, there's a lot of other people. And if you're like a lone librarian in a building, like how do you find other librarians, right? Maybe you're the only grade 7 teacher in your school and you want to teach a book no one's taught before, right? Like, how do you find other people? Like Fold is definitely a community as well of just being in the literary world and being with that mindset of diversity, that it's everybody. We want everybody included in this conversation.
I love that. Well, thank you both. And thank you for wrapping up in such a lovely way. Because I do think one of the things we try to do is try to take the guesswork out of it, right? There's so much pressure around being inclusive and understanding all these lives that you definitely haven't lived, right? We can only have lived so much. And I think what we're trying to do, and we can't do it in a single year, but over the lifetime of Fold Kids Book Fest and Fold Kids, is to provide enough content and resources that you're learning, you're growing, and we're providing things for your classroom that are really useful and that help you in that growth. So thank you, Tony, for what you do. Thank you, Ardo, for what you do. I have a few other things to tie up. Before we open into questions, again, drop those questions in the question and answer box, and Tony and Ardo will come back to provide their wisdom at that point as well. Okay, so one of the questions people often ask at this point is like the hows of it, how do we get a pass? How does it work? Ardo, if you want to bring up that.
I think before we get there, we are actually offering a sneak peek.
I forgot. Before we get to money and exciting things like that, Ardo has a big reveal. I forgot. I knew there was something else and I was losing my mind. It is not my turn to talk. I'm passing it back to Ardo. Do the big reveal.
So we're going to reveal the new look for Fold Kids Book Fest 2025. And it is this. So every year we have an illustrator in residence who essentially creates the look for the festival. And this year it is done by Ken Daly, who is incredible and lovely. I think by the time this event ends is when we'll share the save the date and this new image for the first time, as well as Ken's author announcements. And then starting from today, we'll be sharing all the lovely authors who will be joining us for the festival. And you can actually find out more about Ken and get a closer look at the poster by heading to thefoldcanada.org/kids and just hitting the festival's menu over there. So just to give you context for when I talk about some sneak peeks into authors that will be joining us, we do have age categories to make all of the lives of our educators as easy as possible. So we have primary, junior, intermediate, teen, and some content for educators that are all color-coded. And so by the time registration opens and you see the full schedule reveal on September 25th, you'll be able to see all of this broken down quite easily. But yeah, sneak peek. So here are some of the authors who'll be joining us. For context, unofficially, we have a theme of kind of, creating change in your neighborhood, because I think similar to adults this last few years, I think kids, especially coming out of the pandemic, have been feeling a lot of things because they're not immune to the real world. So we wanted a bit of our programming to reflect that as well, on top of being very entertaining for kids. So we have Brianna Core-Scott, who wrote I Lost a Day, a picture book, doing 2 events, one for primary and one for junior intermediate, on depression. So the book is about kids dealing with depression and how they can cope with depression, and she'll be doing some fun activities around that. We have May Yu also joining us, who won, I believe, a Silver Birch Express Award at Forest of Reading this year for Lost and Found, and will be doing 2 events with us, including the Illustrator Battle. Yes, the Illustrator Battle, our fun little illustration game show, is returning once again, and May Yu will be one of the illustrators featured, along with Ken Daly. And then lastly, Corey Liu, who is a debut author. He So Possessed With Me is a queer horror, and he'll be doing an interview with Ryan LaSala, our lone American, on queer horror. And that is going to be a bonus event because, as I had mentioned, October 30th, we're opening the platform a few days early to give you all the opportunity to explore the space. And so when you're doing that, there will be bonus Halloween themed events available to watch immediately. And Corey is part of one of those events. Yeah, and of course, before I pass it on to Jael, anything related to Fold Kids Book Fest, highly recommend joining our newsletter so you can get all the up-to-date information, and you can find that over at thefoldcanada.org/kids at the bottom of your screen.
Amazing. Thank you. So this is what I thought I was talking about a minute ago, and now I'm talking about it. So thank you for your patience. So a little bit of understanding about how the pricing works. There are 2 main categories or ways that you can access the festival. You can either purchase an individual virtual pass, which I'll talk about in a moment, or you can be a part of a school board that has a school board wide pass. And one of the reasons we're mentioning this, doing this event so early, is registration opens September 25th. And if you're getting an individual virtual pass, September 25th is going to be fine. But if you are a school board who would like to purchase a school board wide pass, or if you are part of a school board in which you would like your school board to purchase a school board wide pass, it is ideal that that is in position or at least confirmed before September 25th so that all that information is ready and available to you and nobody registers by accident when they actually have a code. So school board wide pass, you'll see the prices there. Some school boards will only purchase a board wide pass for Fold Kids Book Fest. Some school boards purchase a board wide pass for Fold Kids Book Fest and Fold, which offers teen content in the spring. So sometimes they'll bundle them and purchase them both at the same time. So that's where those two prices come from. The top two prices has a new category. So you can purchase an individual virtual pass that's going to give you access to the platform for a month. That was our typical virtual pass. But one of the things we wanted to do is we heard from a lot of educators who are part of school boards who were not purchasing board-wide passes, and board-wide passes give educators access to the platform for the entire year. And so these educators had to purchase their own passes, but also wanted access for the entire school year. So we've made it possible for you to either have access for a month, if that's all you want, or to purchase a virtual pass plus as an individual and to be able to have access to the platform for the entire school year, like someone who is part of a school board who has purchased a school board wide pass. The graphic on your right is a graphic of all the school boards who purchased school board wide passes last year. This is not a guarantee that they will purchase school board wide passes this year, but we have sent communication to those boards as a starting point to get that conversation going in the hopes that they confirm confirm at some point, but preferably before September 25th. So that's just an indication. I can tell you that Hamilton Wentworth wins for first school board to confirm, if I recall correctly, and the team might correct me on that, and I apologize if I'm wrong. But that's a process that's happening right now. Our goal is to lock in as many boards as possible as soon as possible so that we can get all the information to the board and that the board can communicate that with educators. If you are part of a school board that has a board-wide pass, please spread the word. There's sort of two challenges for us: getting school boards to confirm and purchase a board-wide pass, and two, getting teachers to actually use the board-wide passes so that the boards are like, oh, this is super valuable. We're getting a great deal on this. So I will just say, oftentimes people who come to these events end up being some of our greatest champions. And so whether you're encouraging your colleagues to get an individual virtual pass or a virtual pass plus, or whether you're convincing your school board and your educators, the more you can help us as ambassadors, we just really appreciate that. For school board wide passes, you'll see the email at the bottom, outreach@thefoldcanada.org. I mentioned Sneha at the beginning. Sneha is the person who communicates with the boards and makes sure that they have their codes, their visuals, their emails to go out to teachers and all that sort of thing. And so actually, just as a correction, just ignore my email at the top. Just go straight to Sneha at Outreach. Pretend you don't know what my email is, because I probably am not as fast as responding as Sneha is. So just for anything related to school board passes in any way, just email outreach@thefoldcanada.org. And Sneha will pop her email address into the chat just to make it easier for you. I think the last thing we're doing is our Q and no. Just to mention, we mentioned that our books are available through Tinlids. Super excited that the book list is up right now. So if you go to tinlids.ca, you have like the super sneak peek at the book list already. This is the earliest we've ever had the book list ready, and I want to commend Ardo and Tinlids for this. Teachers have been asking for it earlier and earlier, and we have finally, I think, figured out a rhythm to make it possible. And so you are the first to hear that the book list for Fold Kids Book Fest is already up and available even before the schedule is revealed, which is, we're making progress. We didn't like to do this because we like secrets, but we realized teachers just want to buy books, and our goal is to sell books and to help promote authors. So just go to Tinlids, you can find that list, you can start to build your book list, you can start to make your purchases already. As we said, it is not mandatory, but I know a lot of you are sort of looking for that kind of resource and direction and help. And so that is available through Tinlids, and every sale through Tinlids comes back and helps the Fold as well. So we really appreciate you supporting them. I know many of you work with independent booksellers as well, like Another Story Bookshop and other places. And please continue to do that. You do not have to jump ship, but this is just one place and resource that we have been working with, and provides really great access to the titles that you might like. Here are some dates. Mentioned registration opens September 25th. Ardo mentioned that the virtual clubhouse opens October 30th. That's the first time when you register, you'll get a confirmation that you are registered, just like a ticket. Here's your ticket for this event that happens down the road. But we actually open up the platform early so that you can get on, look around, maybe try out some events, see what it looks like before our live events begin on November 4th to 6th. And it includes some bonus events that we pop in there, including some Halloween themed ones. November 4th to 6th is when those live events happen. There's about 20 of them that will happen across those three days, including some evening events that are specifically for educators. So pour a glass of wine, hang out with us there. And then there are some in-person events that happen after that. This shows you as well, the virtual platform will close to those who just have a single virtual pass option on December 9th. But for those who have a board-wide pass or who have a virtual pass plus, you'll have access till June 30th. So for the entire school year. And that is it for us. I wanted to share the results of our poll. We're super excited that for those of you who were able to do the poll, 77% of you who are attending today have never been to Fold Kids Book Fest before. So welcome, hello, we're so glad you're here. If you have questions, pop them in that Q&A box. We're gonna take a few. And I don't know if Tony, you saw one that you wanted to start with?
Yeah, I got a really fast one. Is the educator guide updated every year? Yes. It has to be.
Yes.
Because every year, different authors, new content, new educator guide, work. So yes, it's going to be brand new, but you won't see it until the platform's open. Right,
Yeah.
Jael? I think it's just live when or am I right?
That's the goal. The goal is that the educator, we are making progress. Again, just to give you a hint, we used to have the book list only when the schedule became available, and the educator guide sometime after that. We are trying to do things earlier. So we have the book list out now. We are hoping that the educator guide is ready to go on the day of registration. And if it is, it'll be in your confirmation email. You'll see it. It'll be all over our website. If it isn't, we will email everyone who's registered as soon as it becomes available. We promise. It's a priority. It just takes a bit.
And also, it means that you have incentive to join the newsletter because that's where it'll get announced when it's ready. And we'll be also sharing it on our social media accounts as well. And because Jill had talked about the bundle school board options to include our adult festival in the spring. That adult festival also has school group events that are virtual, and they also get an educator guide as well. So Tony works on that as well, and so we get sent. Technically, there's 2 educator guides a year for both festivals. But yeah.
There's a question here from about the curriculum connections. And I'm going to ask you, Tony, because you're definitely our expert on this. Does the educator guide have connections and supports that are applicable to curriculum from provinces and territories outside of Ontario?
Short answer, no. I just work in Ontario. I just know Ontario curriculum, but very keen to do more.
Yeah.
So if there is someone out there,
yeah,
if you are like, I love curriculum, I know, you don't even have to know all the curriculum.
Yeah.
You just have to be, well versed in how your curriculum works. Email somebody at Fold, find one of us and say
that's where my email might actually be applicable. It's fine. I will say one of the things that's hard when you're starting something like Fold is to support everybody fully, especially with a small team. And so what I will say is it is my dream. It is my goal. I mentioned OLA. I mentioned Reading for the Love of It. But truthfully, my big dream is that across Canada, every province and territory would be participating in Fold Kids Book Fest and would find the relevance in it to the curriculum they're learning. So I have hopes, dreams, plans that, we have someone like Tony in every province, that we have school board board-wide passes for school boards that are outside of Ontario. It hasn't come yet. It hasn't come easily, but I know it will come. And so I just mentioned that in case there's anybody who's watching this, attending this, who's like, that's me. you're calling me. I will be the one, because we're really happy to expand. And I think that, in my mind, there's one day where Tony's sitting around a virtual meeting with a representative from other provinces who are all sort of contributing to the content that goes in. And so, yeah, the answer is no, but the hope is yes. Um, a question.
Do you want me to take that one from
Sure.
Victoria?
I haven't even read them, so you go
So
and I'll look.
Victoria, Victoria said, not a question, but a noted need. Huge publishing gap in high-low secondary content that isn't, to use your words, trauma-based. Would love to know if Ardo or anyone at the Fold has suggestions for this gap or pull with publishers to advocate. Well, Victoria, I'm glad you brought up high-low in particular, because there is a publisher that I wanted to highlight, Orca Book Publishers. They have high-low titles and they have really fun ones. So I found out about Orca actually through my job at the Fold, my first year. And it's also when I met Marty Chan, who is an author, I think he's based out west, I believe in Alberta, but he writes a lot of high-low content for Orca, among other authors, and a lot of fun, different kinds. Like the Haunted Hospital was a very fun, high-low secondary a book as well. So Orca Book Publishers is a publisher I want to highlight because they cornered the market in terms of really entertaining high-low content from inclusive voices. So yeah. But yeah, we need more of those. I have heard, again, publishing is slow. So we're talking about something that's going to be published like 2 years from now, right? So, but I have heard a need for shorter middle grade books. I heard like shorter because kids seem to be more interested in like shorter prose, fiction middle grade books. So we might see more of that, is what I've been hearing. But yeah, I'm hoping to see more high-low.
I will also plug, and this is a really embarrassing plug because it's actually my book, but it's actually a collection of other storytellers. So I will just say, Today I Am is a middle grade collection of short stories, and the short stories quite cover a range. I would say like almost grade 6 through 10, depending on the story. And that was because there was this interest in shorter content by Canadian authors, by authors of color in particular, telling different kinds of stories. And so that came out last year. And like all my children's books, they've all been requested. I never went out and set out to write children's books per se, but have had the privilege of that one commissioning, asking 9 other authors to contribute stories. And I really love that one. And I think it would be really useful. It would have been useful to me when I was in school. And so I'm shouting it out on behalf of the other 9 in particular. But that's an option as well that covers that sort of short content quest. The next question is for Tony. And then this is our last question. So unless you pop a question in quickly, we will wrap up after this. If there is another question, we will try and tackle it. But this question says, Tony mentioned she finds inclusive titles through publishers. Which ones are recommended? Thanks.
So if I said publishers, I should have said vendors, because we have, like at our school board, we have like certain bookstores that are our vendors. So again, because I'm in Peel, like another story is based in Toronto, and they have a lot of lists like on their websites of just different titles. You can talk to their staff, like they're super helpful there. The Beguiling is the vendor I go to for my graphic novels. If you're in a middle school, like graphic novels and manga is what moves off my shelves. No shade to like fiction writers. It's just yeah, so I guess, yeah, not really a publisher necessarily, because the vendors are who I can buy from, unless it's like Saunders I can buy directly from, but a lot of them are usually a store and then they're carrying different publishers. So I usually are bothering the store maybe, or I call it a vendor because, you know what I mean, Ardo? Like it's, yeah.
I will say, because I'm the one who deals with publishers directly, I recommend going to our thefoldcanada.org/kids. We do have a page, our Canadian publishers page, where it's just a list of all the Canadian publishers that publish titles by Canadians, and specifically children's content. So some publishers will do both adult and kids, and they'll also be recommended or listed on that. But there's also like children only publishers. So I'll just highlight a few that I really love. Groundwood Books produces beautiful books. Annick produces probably what like every year consistently amazing, fantastic books. Annick Press. Who else? Owl Kids, Kids Can Press. Yeah, so we have there's like truly so many. And we have our multinationals, the ones that operate in multiple countries like Harper, Penguin, Simon, and Schuster. But I do want to highlight that we do have independent presses, right? Small publishers like Annick, like Orca, who do produce fantastic content, maybe not to the same scale as our multinationals, but every title is like hitting. It's like amazing. It'll meet all your needs.
Ardo, there's one with flamingo in the title.
Yes, Flamingo Rampant Press also does diverse queer.
I feel like they hit on. They're
Yeah,
very
that's some great
strong.
stuff.
There was a very
And
quick.
I will say, whenever you list somebody, you're leaving somebody out. So one of the things that I will just shout out is our exhibit hall is really great in that it allows a space for publishers who are saying like, we're making this, we're making diverse content that you're looking for, and we're purchasing a booth so that you can find us. So I would just highly recommend going to the exhibit hall when you go to the festival and adding things to your tote bag from those lists, because those are people that have just said, not only do we print this, but we also support Fold Kids, and that's like a great group. Two things that have come up in the question and answer box. Where is the list? I'm gonna ask either Ardo or Sneha to try and pop that link into the chat before we wrap up. The other question was about, which is where is the list of publishers? The other question was about what is high-low content, and just really quickly, and Ardo will correct me if I'm not complete in this answer, it's high content, low reading level. So it's like more mature storytelling, but at a level for a reader who might not be, at that reading level. So that's what they mean by high-low.
Yeah, high interest, lower reading level. Yeah, so you'll have a book that interests teens, but maybe the teens are not reading at their age level.
Great. Said much better than I did. So thank you so much to everyone. Were you able to get that link into the chat?
Yes.
Perfect. So check the chat, grab that link quickly before we wrap up. I want to say thank you to Sneha for managing the chat on week 3 of working with Fold. And I want to say thank you to Tony for joining us. And Ardo, thank you for your incredible work on this, preparing this and preparing for Fold Kids Book Fest. For those of you who are watching this back on demand, just a reminder, you can go to thefoldcanada.org/kids to get relevant information. Make sure you signed up for the kids newsletter, and check out all of our other resources as well. If you're looking for more information about Fold, how we started, what we're about, you can check out our podcast Into the Fold as well, which provides up-to-date information about last season was all about how we started. This season is a lot about writing and publishing and some of the challenges that we face navigating that. So thanks again. Enjoy your day. I'm wishing you an excellent school year.